Christmas morning has a sound when you're old and alone. It's not carols, not laughter, not the squeal of wrapping paper. It's the radiator clicking like an impatient insect in the wall. The refrigerator motor humming with the stubbornness of a thing that outlived its warranty by a decade. The wind tapping the kitchen window with a fingernail made of ice. And if you're me, it's the coffee percolator. My wife's old stainless steel percolator, gurgling on the stove because I never trusted those pod machines that look like they were designed by someone who hates flavor on principle. My name is Harold Klein, 72 years old, widower since March 14, 2021, 2:47 a.m. If you want the exact minute my world narrowed to a hospital monitor and a nurse who wouldn't meet my eyes. I used to wake up on Christmas to the smell of butter and cinnamon and my wife, June, humming off-key while she rolled out dough. She'd flick flour at my nose and tell me to stop hovering like a ghost. Now the flour sits in the pantry, untouched. The rolling pin is in the back of a drawer under old pot holders and a broken can opener. And the only thing humming is the refrigerator. I set 2 plates out anyway. Habit is a funny prison. You keep walking the same route even after the building burns down. I toasted 2 slices of bread, one plain for me, one with strawberry jam I didn't actually want because June used to like it. I cracked 2 eggs, then put one back in the carton like I hadn't just embarrassed myself in front of the stove. The tree in the corner looked decent from 10 feet away. Up close, it was a tragedy. Sparse needles. One side missing lights because I'd stepped on the cord last week and snapped the plug. Ornaments unevenly spaced because when you hang decorations alone, nobody tells you you've made it look like a ransom note. I was still standing there, staring at a glass ornament shaped like a tiny red mitten, when the knock came. Not a friendly knock. A knock with purpose. 3 sharp taps. A pause. 2 more. Like a man trying not to look desperate. I looked at the clock, 8:12 a.m. I hadn't heard a car pull in yet. Then again, my hearing is fine when it comes to bills sliding through the mail slot and not much else. I opened the door and felt the cold push into my house, like an uninvited relative. Evan stood on my porch with his hands in his coat pockets and a smile that didn't quite get permission to use his face. My son, 43, tall like me, but with less patience in his eyes and more polish on his shoes. Behind him was Meredith, his wife, carrying a cardboard tray with 2 coffees and the kind of expression you see on people who bring their own napkins to restaurants. "Dad," Evan said, like the word was a box he had to pick up and carry. "Morning," I replied. I didn't step aside right away. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to feel what it was like to be in the way for once. Meredith's gaze drifted past my shoulder into the house. The tree, the plates, the faint smell of bacon I'd cooked because I was trying to convince myself the day mattered. "Oh," she said softly, and not in a warm way. "You're up early." "Old people do that," I said. "It's our hobby." Evan gave a quick laugh. Automatic, polite. Meredith didn't. They came in without waiting for an invitation. Boots leaving wet stars on my entry rug. Meredith set the coffees on the side table like she was placing evidence. "I got you a latte," she said. "Oat milk. Less inflammation." "I miss the days when coffee was just coffee," I muttered. Evan shrugged off his coat and hung it on the hook June installed in 2009. She'd measured the height twice, worried he'd yank it off the wall as a teenager. That memory hit like a small stone to the ribs. Sharp, quick, pointless. Meredith didn't take her coat off. She never did. Always ready to leave. Always protected from the upholstery. "Where's your heat?" she asked, glancing around. "It's freezing." "It's Ohio," I said. "That's how it comes." Evan rubbed his hands. "Dad, you doing okay? You look tired." There it was. The first little probe. The hook, dressed up as concern. "I'm alive," I said. "That's the whole report." Meredith opened her purse, one of those structured leather ones that look like they were trained to stand at attention, and pulled out a small gift bag. White tissue paper, gold ribbon. It had a boutique logo on it. A fancy bag for a simple message. "Look how thoughtful we are. From us," she said, handing it to me. I took it. The bag was light. Probably socks. Maybe another smart pill organizer. Because Meredith had decided my age meant I should live in a state of supervised inconvenience. "Thank you," I said. Evan glanced at the kitchen. "Smells good. You cooking?" "Trying," I said. It's a dangerous activity at my age. I might accidentally enjoy it. Meredith's lips tightened. We can help you with meals, There are services. We've looked. We, meaning Meredith. She always said when she meant I decided, and Evan nodded. I waved toward the kitchen. Sit. You want bacon? There's bacon. They sat at my table like they were visiting a museum exhibit called Retired Man, mildly stubborn. I poured myself coffee. Black. Real. No oat involvement. Evan cleared his throat. Meredith watched the steam rise from her cup like it was a test. Dad, Evan began. We didn't come just for breakfast. I sat down slowly. My knees complained in their usual tone, resigned but bitter. Of course you didn't, I said. Nobody drives 28 minutes on Christmas just to watch me eat toast. Meredith's eyes flicked to Evan. He nodded, like they'd rehearsed the timing. We've been worried, Evan said. About everything. Everything is a big subject, I said. Try a smaller one. Meredith leaned forward. Your finances. There it was, the real Carol, the hymn of hungry people. I stared at her for a moment, then at Evan. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My finances are fine, I said. Meredith smiled like she was trying to sell me a warranty. We just want to make sure everything is secure. Scammers target seniors. Fraud. Identity theft. People get wiped out. I took a bite of toast, chewed slowly, let the silence stretch. I've managed my money longer than you've been alive, I said to Evan. And I did it without a single app. Evan rubbed his forehead. Dad, come on. It's not about your ability. It's about planning. Meredith added, and accessibility. I said, accessibility. That word always shows up right before someone tries to access something. Meredith's face flushed slightly. Evan's jaw tightened. He tried again, softer, just in case. If something happened, if you fell, had a stroke, anything, God forbid, we'd need to pay bills, handle accounts, into things. I looked at the place at the end of the table where June used to sit. Her chair was still there. I never moved it. Like the furniture might bring her back if I waited long enough. If something happens to me, I said, you call 911, not my bank. Meredith exhaled through her nose, a controlled annoyance. Evan's voice lowered. Dad, what's your bank password? He said it like he was asking for the salt. My fingers stopped moving. My mouth went still. My eyes lifted to his. The room felt sharper, like the air had little edges. You drove here, I said. On Christmas morning, Dad, to ask me for my password. Meredith interjected smoothly. It's not like that. It's just, like what? I asked. Like love? Like concern? Like family? Evan's cheek reddened. Don't do that. Do what? Hear words the way they sound. Meredith put her hand on Evan's forearm. Possessive. Steering. We're trying to protect you, she said. You've been forgetful. I felt something warm crawl up my spine. Not rage yet. More like the early heat before boiling. The kind you notice and pretend you don't. Forgetful, I repeated. Interesting. Evan finally met my eyes, and I saw it. Not worry. Not love. Calculation wearing his face like a mask. Dad, he said slower. We need it. Need. There's another word that always shows up right before theft gets dressed as necessity. I sipped my coffee, buying time, letting my heart do its little angry drum solo inside my ribs. You remember, I said quietly, when you were 19 and you needed tuition? Evan blinked. What? You remember when you were 26 and you needed a down payment? Meredith's gaze sharpened, like a dog that heard a drawer open. And when you were 38, I continued, and you needed temporary help because your company's cash flow was tight? Evan's mouth opened, then closed. I set my cup down gently. No shaking. Not yet. You want my password, I said. Like I'm a lamp you can unplug and carry. Meredith's tone hardened. Harold, please don't be dramatic. It's basic responsibility. I stared at her. Harold? She rarely used my name. She didn't like sounding familiar unless she wanted something. Responsibility, I echoed and almost laughed. That's rich coming from a woman who once called my retirement dead money over Thanksgiving pie. Evan snapped. That was a joke. A joke, I said. And now you're asking for my bank password. On Christmas. Meredith's smile disappeared completely. If you don't want to cooperate, fine. But then you can't complain when things get complicated later. There it was, the threat, wrapped in later. I looked at my tree, at the half-lit string of lights, at the ornament mitten, at the empty chair, and I thought, June, you were right. She always said, one day they'll stop seeing you as a father and start seeing you as inventory. I stood up. Evan stiffened, as if I might swing a fist. I've never swung at anyone in my life, but guilt makes people flinch. I'll get it, I said. Meredith's eyes lit with quick satisfaction. Evan sagged slightly, relieved. I walked down the hallway to my study. The study still smelled faintly of June's perfume because I'd found her scarf in a drawer last year and couldn't bring myself to wash it. The desk was cluttered with ordinary things, a yellow legal pad, a magnifying glass, a cheap desk lamp with a cracked shade, a stapler that jammed every third try. Domestic, boring. Safe, on the top shelf of my bookcase, behind an old shoebox of photographs, sat a thick folder, manila, 2 inches wide, label on the tab, written in my blocky handwriting, Evan/Meredith, December 2024. I took it down like I was taking down a plate from cabinet. Nothing dramatic. No shaking hands. Then I carried it back into the kitchen. Evan straightened like a student when the teacher returns with graded exams. Meredith's gaze locked onto the folder. Her pupils tightened. I placed it on the table between us. Here, I said. Evan reached for it instinctively. Possession as reflex. I put my palm down on the folder. Firm. Flat. He stopped. What's this? He asked. This, I said, is what you came for. Meredith's voice sharpened. We asked for your password. I smiled a little. It wasn't warm. I heard you, I said. Open it. Evan hesitated, then slid the folder toward himself anyway, trying to look casual, like he was opening a menu. Meredith leaned closer, coffee forgotten. I watched his hands. His fingers were clean, nails trimmed, the hands of a man who rarely held anything heavier than a phone. He lifted the cover. The first page was a simple list, printed large, no decoration. Total transfers from Harold Klein to Evan Klein/Meredith Klein, 01/2019. 11/2024 $214,780.62. Under it, a breakdown. Mortgage, bridge payments, Evan's house $96,000. 24 payments of $4,000. 06/2020, 05/2022. Temporary business transfers. $58,500. 12 wires. Memo lines include inventory, payroll, taxes. Credit card payoffs, Meredith's cards $31,280.62. 6 lump payments. 1 marked Nordstrom Amex. Travel/tickets/lodging. $29,000. Includes Christmas flights, December 2022, and Disney package, July 2023. Evans stared at the numbers like they were printed in a foreign language. Meredith's mouth opened slightly, then pressed shut. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the page. I sipped my coffee. Let them chew. Evan cleared his throat. Dad, what is this? A tally, I said, because I got tired of guessing. Meredith's voice took on that bright, offended tone people use when they're caught. Those were gifts you offered. Some were, I said. Some were you needing help. Some were you borrowing. And some were just happening. I tapped the folder lightly. Keep going. Evan flipped the page. Autopay authorization. Unauthorized addition. A screenshot of my bank's autopay dashboard. A line highlighted in yellow. Payee, M. Klein Consulting/amount. $1,250/frequency. Monthly/added. 02/03/2023/device. Evan Klein iPhone. Below it, a printed note from my bank's fraud department. Dated 10/18/2024. Acknowledging complaint and a pending investigation. Evan's face went pale. Meredith's neck reddened. It's not what it looks like. I offered. Evan stammered. Dad, I set that up because you said you wanted us to have a little cushion. I laughed. A short, dry sound. I said I'd help if you were drowning, I said. Not if you were shopping while standing in a kiddie pool. Meredith snapped. Harold, don't be cruel. We have expenses. We have a child. You have a leased SUV, I said. You have a Peloton that's become an expensive coat rack. You have a kitchen remodel that cost more than my first house. Evan's hands shook as he turned the next page. He was beginning to understand this wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. Promissory note. Signed 08/11/2020. The note was crisp. My signature at the bottom. Evan's signature, too. Meredith's, thin and sharp. Principal, $75,000. Purpose, down payment assistance. Repayment, $1,250 per month, beginning 10/01/2020. Default clause. In case of non-payment beyond 90 days, lender may file lien and pursue recovery with interest at 6.5% APR. Evan swallowed. Dad, I thought. You thought what? I asked. That because you're my son, contracts become bedtime stories? Meredith's voice turned icy. Are you seriously threatening your own child on Christmas? I held her gaze. He threatened me first. He just did it with a smile. Evan tried to regain footing. He looked at me with a pleading expression I remembered from his childhood, when he'd broken something and wanted forgiveness before admitting he did it. Dad, you know I love you. I leaned back in my chair. That line used to work when your voice still cracked. Meredith shoved her coffee aside. If you don't give us the password, we can't help you. And if something happens, that's on you. I reached across the table and slid the folder an inch closer to her. Keep reading, I said. You'll see how much help you've been giving. Evan flipped again. Transcript. Record a call. 09/02/2024. 7:41 p.m. A transcription from my old digital recorder. I'd bought it at a Best Buy with cash because I'm old-fashioned like that. The speaker labels were clear. Meredith. He doesn't even know how to check his account. He thinks those transfers are utilities. Just keep it steady until we get the POA. Evan, what if he asks? Meredith, he won't. And if he does, we tell him it's for his care. He'll feel guilty for questioning us. Old people love guilt. It's their favorite hobby. Evan's breath hitched. Meredith's face went rigid. The way drywall looks right before cracks. That's fabricated, she said quickly. That's fake. I smiled again. Still not warm. There's an audio file, too. Timestamps. Metadata. But sure, fake. Evan's voice was small. Mayor, what is this? Meredith snapped at him. It's out of context. I nodded. Everything ugly sounds better with context. Add all you want. Evan looked like he might vomit, or cry, or do whatever men do when they realize they've been the instrument and not the composer. He turned the page with trembling fingers. Power of attorney. Revoked, signed plus notarized 11/15/2024. New financial POA appointment. Marlene Hart, attorney-in-fact. A name neither of them recognized. Meredith's brows pinched. Who the hell is Marlene Hart? My wife's sister, I said. The one you stopped inviting to dinner because she asks questions. Evan whispered, Dad, why? Because she loves me, I said. Not my routing number. Meredith stood abruptly, chair scraping. This is insane. You're paranoid. I stayed seated. Paranoia is fear without evidence. This is paperwork. Evan stared down at the next page, and his voice went thin. Dad, what's this? He held up a document with a court header. County Court of Cuyahoga, Civil Division. Complaint. Elder financial exploitation /fraud /undue influence. Plaintiff. Harold Klein. Defendants. Evan Klein, Meredith Klein. Under it, stamped in bold. Filed. 12/23/2024, 9:14 a.m. Meredith's face changed. Not anger. Not even fear. Something uglier. Contempt. You filed this, she said, each word clipped. 2 days ago. I did, I said. Evan looked up, eyes wet. Dad, you're suing me? I stared at my son. The boy who once cried because he thought Santa wouldn't find our apartment when we moved. The man who now showed up on Christmas morning asking for my bank password like it was a family tradition. You sued yourself, I said softly. I just wrote it down. Meredith's voice rose. You're going to humiliate us. Over money. I leaned forward. My voice stayed calm, which is always the worst kind of anger. Over theft, I corrected. Over lying. Over treating me like a senile ATM that makes a cute beeping noise if you press hard enough. Evan's hands clenched. Dad, I never wanted. Meredith, cut him off. Don't you dare play victim. She turned to me. You can't do this. People will think you're unstable. You're alone. You're old. Who's going to believe you? I stared at her for a long moment, then reached under the folder and pulled out the final item, a smaller envelope sealed, with a courthouse logo in the corner. I slid it toward her. "Open that," I said. Her fingers hesitated. Then she ripped it open with the same energy she used to tear open shopping packages. Inside was a notice. Hearing date, 01/09/2025, 10:30 a.m. Temporary restraining order requested. Asset freeze petition pending. Meredith's throat moved as she swallowed. Evan's voice cracked. "Dad." I looked at him, really looked, not at the man he'd become, but at the parts of him that were still mine. "I loved your mother," I said quietly, "and she loved you, and I still somehow love you." Meredith scoffed. "So noble." I continued, "But love doesn't mean I hand you my throat because you promised not to squeeze." Evan's shoulders sagged. "What do you want?" I stared at the tree lights blinking unevenly. One string dead, one string alive. A good metaphor for my family. "I want my life back," I said, "and I want you to stop treating my death like a business plan." Meredith's laugh was sharp. "You think you can win? You think you're some mastermind?" I didn't answer her. I just stood up, walked to the living room, and opened my front door. Cold air rushed in again, and right then, like Christmas had decided to coordinate the timing, a car door slammed outside. Footsteps crunched on my walkway. A man in a heavy coat approached, holding a clipboard. "Harold Klein," he called. I watched Meredith's face as she realized this wasn't just a folder. It was real life. "I have documents to serve," the man said, and I stepped aside. "Come on in," I told him. "The coffee's still hot." The process server introduced himself as if we were at a networking event. "Darren Price," he said. "I'll just need signatures acknowledging receipt." Meredith stared at him like he was a cockroach that learned to speak. Evan looked like he might faint. Darren placed the papers on my table carefully, almost respectfully, like he'd done this enough times to know when the room was full of shame. "Mr. and Mrs. Klein," he said, turning to them, "you are being served." Meredith's voice came out too loud. "On Christmas?" Darren blinked. "I don't choose dates, ma'am." I did, though. Not because I'm cruel. Because Christmas is when they came to collect. So Christmas is when I cashed them out. Evan took the papers with shaking hands. Meredith didn't touch them, like paper could contaminate her. "This is elder abuse," Meredith snapped at me, eyes blazing. "You're abusing us." I laughed. This time it surprised even me. "You think consequences are abuse," I said. "That's adorable." Evan whispered, "Dad, I didn't know about the autopay." Meredith whipped around on him. "Oh my God, Evan." He flinched, actually flinched. A grown man flinching at his wife's tone. I watched that, and something in me settled into place with a quiet click. Not satisfaction, not joy, clarity. That's what exploitation does. It scrapes away your excuses until only truth remains, sharp and plain. Darren cleared his throat. "Sign here, please." And here. Evan signed. Meredith refused. Darren shrugged. Refusal noted. Still served. He turned to me. "Anything else, sir?" I nodded toward the hallway. "Yes. Could you step outside for a moment? I'd like to speak with my family." Darren did. He was professional. He knew when a room needed to bleed privately. Meredith rounded on me the second the door closed. "You're vindictive," she hissed. "This is because you're lonely and you need control." I looked at her, coat still on, purse clutched like a life raft. "I'm lonely because my wife died," I said. "Not because I need to control you." Evan's voice shook. "Dad, please. We can talk. We can fix this." Meredith shot him a look. "Fix what?" "He's attacking us." I leaned on the back of my chair, feeling the wood under my palms. Familiar. Solid. Home. "Let's talk about attacking," I said. "February 3rd, 2023. When you added that autopay, you used Evan's phone. You weren't even subtle." Meredith scoffed. "It was for care. You needed help." "Care is when someone brings you soup," I said. "Not when they siphon $1,250 a month and call it consulting." Evan looked at her. "Mayor, did you?" Meredith snapped. Don't you start. We did what we had to." There it was again. Had to. The anthem of greedy people. I opened the folder again and pulled out a few more pages, fanning them like cards. June's funeral, I said. March 19th, 2021. You remember? You stood in the back with sunglasses on and checked your phone during the eulogy. Meredith's lips curled. Are we doing character assassination now? No, I said. We're doing receipts. I pointed to a bank statement. March 20th, 2021, transfer out. $9,800, memo. Emergency. The day after I buried my wife, I said softly. Someone transferred nearly 10 grand. Evan's face drained. Dad, I don't remember. You don't remember because you didn't care, Meredith said coldly. And she didn't even realize she'd said it out loud. Evan turned to her, stunned. Meredith. I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes. Brief. Controlled. Like a match struck and pinched out. That, I said, voice low, is why I'm done. Meredith lifted her chin. You can't prove intent. I nodded. That's what your lawyer will say. Mine will show the pattern. Evan's eyes filled. Dad, I swear I never wanted to hurt you. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I reached into the folder and pulled out a thin, glossy photo. A picture of my grandson Oliver, 6 years old, smiling with missing front teeth, holding a Lego set. I placed it on the table. I'm not doing this to punish him, I said. I'm doing this so he learns what love looks like without a price tag. Meredith's voice was bitter. So you'll take his father to court and call that love? I leaned closer, eyes on hers. I'll take his father to court so his father stops stealing from his grandfather and calling a family. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. Evan swallowed. What happens now? I didn't answer right away, because the truth is, what happened now had been happening for months. They just hadn't noticed because they thought I was too old to move quietly. If you believe older voices still matter, support this channel with a like and a subscription. It started with a missing check. August 7th, 2024. A Tuesday. Hot and sticky. The kind of day when your shirt clings to your back, like regret. I'd written a check to the electric company. $198.47. Then left it on the counter under the fruit bowl. I remember because I'd bought peaches that day and they smelled like summer used to. The next morning, the check was gone. The bill wasn't paid. Instead, my online banking showed a transfer to an account I didn't recognize. When I called Evan, he laughed lightly. Dad, you probably moved it by accident. I didn't laugh. When I asked him to come over and look, Meredith showed up instead. She tapped her nails on my keyboard like it offended her. You shouldn't be logging in yourself, she said. It's risky. And in that moment, something in me, something June had trained with years of Harold, don't be naive, lifted its head. Because if you're trying to protect someone, you don't start by taking their eyes. I played along. That's the part people don't understand about old men. They think we're slow because we move carefully. They confuse patience with helplessness. I nodded. I thanked her. I let her fix things. And then, when they left, I drove to the library and used a public computer to change my passwords. Every one. I opened a new account at a different bank. Small credit union, local boring. The kind of place scammers don't brag about. I set up paper statements, mailed to my P.O. box. Yes, I have a P.O. box. June made me get it in 2018 because she said, if you ever have to hide something from your own family, you'll want a lock. God, I miss being wrong with her. Then I bought the recorder. Not because I'm dramatic, because I taught high school history for 37 years. And if there's one thing you learn teaching teenagers, it's this. People lie best when they think you're too tired to challenge them. I recorded phone calls. I saved texts. I printed bank statements until my printer wheezed like an asthmatic dog. I met with an attorney, Marlene's friend, Dana Holloway, on October 4th, 2024, at 3:30 in a small office that smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. Dana didn't pity me. That's why I hired her. She looked at the statements, the transcripts, the promissory note. This is a pattern, she said. Undue influence. Potential fraud. I asked her, can I get it back? She looked me in the eye. We can try, and we can stop it now. Stopping it was the part that mattered most. Because money is money. Dignity is oxygen. Dana helped me revoke the POA Evan had talked me into signing in 2022, just in case. I remember that day. Evan brought the papers. Meredith brought cupcakes. You ever notice how some people bring sugar when they want you to swallow something bitter? The revocation was notarized. Copies sent to my bank. Copies sent to Evan, too. He never mentioned it, because he never opened his mail unless it looked like a check. Then Dana did the thing that made me sleep for the first time in months. She helped me move what remained of my savings, what was left after their quiet drain, into trust that Evan and Meredith couldn't touch, with Marlene as a trustee until I died. I wasn't cutting my son out of everything. I was cutting his hands off my throat. By the time they showed up on Christmas morning, asking for my password, the trap was already sprung. They just hadn't stepped on the obvious part yet. After Darren left, Meredith grabbed her coffee like it was a weapon and marched toward the door. Evan lingered, papers in his hands, eyes darting between me and his wife like he was watching two cliffs collapse and trying to decide which one to stand under. "Dad," he said quietly, "please, don't do this. We can repay. We can." Meredith whirled. "Evan, we're leaving." Evan flinched again. I said, "Sit." He froze. Then, slowly, he sat back down. Meredith stared at him as if he'd betrayed her with his spine. I looked at my son and spoke like I used to speak to students who thought excuses were currency. "Tell me the truth," I said. "Did you ask for the password because you were scared for me?" Evan's eyes filled. He opened his mouth. Meredith cut in fast. "Of course he was. You're twisting." "Not you," I said, without raising my voice. Meredith's face went stiff. Evan's breath shook. Finally, he whispered, "No." One word. Small. Devastating. Meredith's head snapped toward him. "Evan." He looked at her, and his voice rose, shaky but real. "No, Meredith. Stop." Her eyes widened, offended. "Excuse me." Evan swallowed hard. "We needed money." Meredith's laugh was incredulous. "Oh my God, are you?" "We needed money," Evan repeated louder now. "And you said Dad wouldn't notice. And you said old people don't need it." Meredith stared at him like he'd slapped her. I sat very still. I felt something in my chest loosen. Not relief, not happiness. Just the end of denial. Meredith pointed at him. "You're blaming me?" Evan's voice cracked. "You told me it was fine. You told me Dad owed us because he hoarded and because his house is wasted on him." Meredith turned to me, face sharp with rage. "So this is what you want? To turn him against me?" I shrugged. I didn't say anything. "You two are doing a fine job without my help." Meredith grabbed her purse, yanked the door open, and there on my porch stood my neighbor, Mrs. Adler, holding a plate covered in foil. 90 years old, widowed, nosy as sin. "I saw a strange man come to your door," she said, peering past Meredith into my kitchen. "Harold, are you okay?" Meredith's smile snapped on like a light switch. "Hi. Merry Christmas. Everything's fine." Mrs. Adler's eyes moved to Evan's trembling hands holding court documents. "Doesn't look fine," she said. Meredith's smile twitched. I stepped into the doorway behind her. "Mrs. Adler, thank you for the cookies." She lifted the plate. "Arugula. My sister's recipe. Now, are these two giving you trouble?" Meredith's face tightened. Evan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "I didn't plan that scene." "Not really. But life loves a little theater when truth is involved." Mrs. Adler looked at Meredith and said, sweet as syrup, "Dear, my first husband stole from me. Not money time, but theft is theft." Meredith's cheeks flushed. "We're leaving." Mrs. Adler stepped slightly forward, still holding the plate like a shield. "Good." And then she added, conversationally, loud enough for the quiet street to hear, "Because if you don't, I'll call my nephew at the police department. And he hates Christmas drama." Meredith went pale. Evan stared at his shoes. They left, boots stomping, door slamming, car starting like a gunshot, tire crunching over the ice at the curb. Mrs. Adler turned to me, eyes soft now. "You okay, Harold?" I took a plate, warm through the foil. Real kindness, the kind that doesn't ask for passwords. "I'm breathing," I said. She nodded. "That's enough for today. Eat something. And don't you dare die until after New Year's. It's inconvenient." I almost smiled. Almost. When she left, I stood alone in my doorway, watching the street settle back into quiet. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Mr. Klein," a woman's voice said, brisk and professional. This is First Lake Credit Union. I'm calling to confirm you're authorizing the immediate restriction of third-party access on your accounts, as per your attorney's request. I looked at the empty kitchen. 2 untouched coffees. 1 plate set for a woman who wasn't coming back. Yes, I said. I authorize it. There was a pause, keyboard clicking. Don, she said. Merry Christmas, Mr. Klein. I hung up, and for the first time that morning, the house felt warm. Not because the radiator improved, because my spine did. 2 weeks later, January 9th, 2025, 10:30 a.m. I sat in a courtroom that smelled like wet coats and old paper. Meredith's lawyer tried to paint me as confused, a lonely man lashing out. Dana Holloway stood, calm as a lake with teeth beneath it, and laid out the timeline. Dates, transfers, signatures, the auto pay added from Evan's phone, the transcripts. Meredith didn't cry. She glared. Evan sat beside her, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Not because he'd shrunk, because truth takes up space, and lies have to squeeze around it. The judge granted a temporary order. Limited contact. No access. A mediation date set. A warning delivered in a voice that didn't care about holiday feelings. Outside the courthouse, Evan caught up to me. Dad, he said, breath visible in the cold. I'm sorry. Sorry is a cheap word when it comes late, but it's not nothing. I looked at him, really looked. What are you sorry for? I asked. For taking or for being caught? His eyes dropped. For both. I nodded. That's honest. Meredith stood a few feet away, arms folded, face like stone. Evan whispered, She says you're ruining our lives. I glanced at her. She ruined mine first. Evan's voice broke. Can you ever forgive me? Forgiveness is another word people misuse. They think it's a reset button. Like you press it, and everything goes back to being warm. I thought of June, a flower on my nose, of her warning that one day I'd be reduced to inventory. I thought of the folder, the neat columns of money, the cold words on transcripts, and I thought of my grandson Oliver, smiling with his Lego set, not yet old enough to understand that adults can be thieves in sweaters. I can love you, I said, and still lock my doors. Evan swallowed hard. I don't want you to hate me, he said. I don't have the energy for hate, I replied. I'm 72. Hate is a young man's sport. I walked to my car. The cold bit my cheeks. The sky was gray and plain. Like Ohio decided to keep things realistic. That night I went home, warmed up leftover soup, and ate Mrs. Adler's rugula for dessert. I sat by my uneven tree, one string of lights still dead, and listened to the radiator click. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. Not anymore. Because for the first time since March 14, 2021, I didn't feel like a man waiting to be taken. I felt like a man who still belonged to himself. And that on its own was the best gift under the tree.